Welcome to the Still Rolling podcast. I'm Matthew Montgomery. I'm your host, and today I've got Eddie Saunders. He is a mixed martial artist, a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and actually one of the most entertaining ring announcers that I've ever seen live. Honestly, I saw you. I was sitting cage side at the American Fight down in downtown Columbus, probably 2 months ago, and you set the show. Like that was incredible. There's a lot of announcers on, especially in the regional scene, where you get out there and they're doing their best Bruce Buffer impression, and that's about the end of it. You absolutely set up the show to get the crowd excited, and you ignited the whole thing and got it started right. So what was the first thing for you that hooked you into the fight game? How did you get started, either in mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu? What led you to get on the mats?
Well, first and foremost, that was a super flattering introduction, and I genuinely appreciate it. I take lots of pride in my craft, and I love that I get to step outside of the cage when they start hitting each other. It's my favorite part. But knowing this, thanks so much for that, is super, super uplifting. But what got me into the sport, over half of my life ago, was I actually lived down the road from a former Sancho and kickboxing world champion who had put in my ears for years, that I should try to train. And so, of course, went to your local Buffalo Wild Wings for a UFC fight in my early teens. And I did so many things as a teenager. And that's one thing that my parents weren't like super into. So they said, well, we're not going to take you to practices. And so once I was 16 years old and got my license, I took my crappy Honda and I went to MMA practice as many days of the week as possible, which obviously led through a career through doing so many other things and now into announcing. But it was just primarily being challenged and having such awesome exposure to a former world champion. It really helps not only expedite your understanding, but then elevate your skill level, therefore increasing the likelihood of you actually enjoying it. And so that was a huge, huge thing for me.
Okay. And so you started out, then you were a striker. When did you start? Was it kind of simultaneous when you said, hey, I'm going to fight? I also going to have some ground skills that got you into doing jiu-jitsu, or were you just kind of, were you a wrestler? Anything?
Definitely wanted to be a wrestler, but from coming from a small school, I started a petition to begin wrestling, and I made it all the way up to our board of education, but was deemed it wasn't academically advantageous. And so I said, okay, cool, I'm just going to still hit the mats. So knowing this, I learned a lot of MMA style jiu-jitsu starting on, because I was trained by a lot of guys who were primarily trained by a kickboxer and, Sancho champion. And so there was a basis of jiu-jitsu there, and there was some wrestlers there. So I got a great experience, but I spent the first at least decade literally just learning strictly kind of MMA type of scenarios. So I didn't even put a gi on until I was 30 years old, right? But I will say, as soon as I put the gi on, like for real, I fell in love with a whole different segment of combat sports and it was a new challenge for me. Because when you do something for so long, it's like, okay, like a lot, and not that I'm ever stopped learning, because anytime we step on the mats, we're always learning something. Jiu-jitsu has just allowed me to open up a door to a massive room that I'll never see all of, but I will continuously be scoping out every square inch of it as I can, because it's a new challenge for me. And it's also not as, intensive on my body, such as kickboxing. Now, that doesn't mean I don't put on the gloves and shin guards and still smoke people's legs, because I do love that. But yeah, jiu-jitsu has actually allowed me to reignite a passion for the sport that was always there, but just find new avenues of growth and challenge.
Okay. Yeah. I think that, I'm a little bit older than you are at this point. And will always be, I guess. That's accurate. So as you get older, I think that some of the striking, you're not going to be able to do that forever, or at least not train at a high level. But jiu-jitsu is kind of one of those things where you can kind of do it until the wheels fall off. You just go a little slower, and the gi helps you slow it down. That's at least how I feel about it. So your transition from being a participant and fighting in MMA to becoming a ring announcer, what was your motivation? Why the mic? Why did it kind of keep you involved in the sport in a different way?
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of people don't know this, but I have done pretty much like everything that you could do within the fight community, if you will, aside from be a ring girl. And they say it's because I'm not qualified. Now, I'm lobbying to this day, but all jokes aside, like I've been the fighter, I've been the corner person, I've been a commentator, I've been the videographer, I've been the photographer, I've been the judge. Like I've just done all of these things. Yeah, and so when I do that and then combine half of my life into this, I was just bound to find something that was a good fit. And then another thing that individuals don't know about me is I have an extensive performance and theater background, like extensive since I was a kid. And so knowing this, it was just a great pairing to be able to use this, outgoing personality, all of this energy I've had since I was a child. And then also put that performance background, because it is a passion of mine, to put it into a very niche type of scenario and stand out in a really, really big way. And it's created lots of amazing opportunities to me to be one of the, if not the most active combat sports announcer on the east side of the Mississippi.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, that it's a perfect marriage. Like I said when I was introducing you, you set the show off. The performance and theater background and the charisma that you've got. When you stepped in, I was like, my first reaction, I was like, who the hell is this guy? But then I was like, dude, that guy is awesome. Is what it is. It's the anti tuxedo Bruce Buffer, and it is get the smoke machines going. Let's have a party and watch some people punch each other in the face. What does your prep look like when you're on a card, as far as preparing yourself to get out there with a microphone and not screw up names and teams? And, what is your system to prepare?
Yeah, I always try not to be a superstitious person. And luckily I have one of the easier jobs. Like I know it could seem crazy and I get a room of 100 people and 99 of them would turn this down, then I'd be like, hey, pick me. But when it comes down to it, I have to be very conscious of my voice because it is super important. And my style is, again, not this ladies. Like I'm not doing this whole Bruce. Like I'm just not doing that. I am putting just so much passion. I put a lot of rasp and I do a lot of things that I've learned vocally just through vocal performance since I was a kid. And so knowing that prior to, I have to make sure that my throat is properly lubricated. Like I have to make sure I'm hydrated for sure. And then a lot of these times I'm not very good at sitting down at these events because I'm warm and I'm wearing this silly costume. So a lot of times I'm standing up and I'm walking around. And so I have to make sure that I'm very, very hydrated and I don't have a lot of time to eat. And so I have to make sure as well, not only that I eat correctly prior to these events, with lots of carbohydrates because of the energy that I require. But then making sure throughout the night that I'm snacking, because there could be a huge, 6 or 7 hour chunk where I'm not having a proper meal and I'm not getting into or out of this event until sometimes closer to midnight, which is when a lot of these restaurants close anyway. So I have to be very, very intentional, or else it will have a high negative impact on my body. And some people also don't take into consideration that I'm losing anywhere from I will lose anywhere from 2 to 2.5 pounds sometimes just in a single evening from all the lights beating. I sweat my bag off for you people. And I love it. I love every second of it. Every drop of sweat is worth it. But knowing being 33 years old and very serious about my fitness and wanting to create longevity, just like with jiu-jitsu, I have to listen to my body. And though I've definitely pushed it in a lot of wrong ways over the last decade, as I get older, I've got my little Medipack, just in case anything happens, I've got my cough drops, but a lot of experiences led me to a lot of cool systems and processes that make sure that, one, my vocals are nice and lubricated. I do a little bit of preliminary vocal warm up, but then making sure my body has the nutrients it needs to be able to actually perform and do the elevated performance that I do.
Okay. So, are you more nervous? How does it compare? Are you more nervous going in there with gloves on or with microphone?
Gloves, 100%. 100,000, largest number you could think of %.
Yeah.
It is way more nerve wracking getting locked in a cage for 3 to 9 minutes, if you will, than it is to do this. Like it's great. And as much as I love it, and I've been asked so many times in the last, 15, when are you gonna compete again? You want to do this? I have zero desire to compete. I prove what I need to on the mats when I do. I'm getting better. I'm on my personal journey. And I love how I contribute to the show, knowing that they are a part of the show. So to more directly answer your question, like I will take getting the microphone and walking out when I'm done and they punch each other any given day.
Right. Yeah. I think I knew the answer, but I just, there are nerves obviously when you go out and give any performance. I actually
naturally, you got to be human, right? Yeah. Naturally.
Yep. How about a time where like maybe things didn't go right, mic doesn't work, mispronounce a name? What is how do you approach things that kind of happen out of the blue? And this, and how does it compare to other real life shit?
No, yeah. I mean, there are many times at these shows where things will happen, and just so many times, every single show you get approached like, "Hey, can you say this in the microphone?" And that is what it is. You have to really be able to roll with the punches, like figuratively, which is an interesting analogy in the fight game. But you have to roll with the punches, and if you're intentional and you have good prep and you take your time and you write your cards very like how it works for you. I mean, it's all literally right in front of you. You just have to be able to read. And there have been a lot of cool things that I've done, mental exercises, if you will, to learn how to slow yourself down because it's easy. And you just learn over all these years how to gauge things out. But it helps reduce the nerves a lot when you've just had so much repetition. And have I missaid things? I think there's been once or twice, maybe in the last 10 years, where I've said something that I didn't mean to that sounded silly. And that's going to happen. Like it's straight going to happen. And the worst thing I think that you can do is try to make a spectacle of it. It's more so just continuing to press on because yes, the vast majority of the room or all of the room just heard you say something, whatever it may be. And regardless of the magnitude of it, if you will, unless you're saying something completely ridiculous, offensive or whatever it is, which you'd have to try to,
sure.
You're a part of the show. You press on, you keep doing this. It's the pressure that comes with it, but repetition, slowing yourself down, proper breathing, and just lots of good systems and processes help you avoid that and mitigate mistakes. But just accepting that it's going to happen is the first step.
So it's how you react to the challenges that you run into. I actually I don't know if you watched that first UFC BJJ finale, the cage side reporter, I don't remember her name. She got stuck and it just got worse and worse. She locked up, like they had to take the cameras off of her and like go talk to something else and then come back to the interview a minute later. It was bad, but she recovered. She was on the next show and did fine.
Happens.
It does. So one lesson from your MMA career that you could share, as far as what do fans not realize about what goes into the fight game that every fighter's going to experience, but fans are not going to know anything about?
Very few individuals will ever understand the sacrifice and that people make and the work that these fighters put into entertaining you for 3 to 15 minutes at a time. They will, until it is something that you do. I mean, there's even jokes about it. People say, "Yeah, I do UFC," or they'll joke like, "Oh, I would do this," and you have all the cornermen in the crowd, if you will, crowd cornermen, for lack of a better term,
right,
where they say, "Do this, elbow here, knee here," but they have such little idea and probably a handful of beers in them, and of course, me as a neutral party and as an absolute professional, and as a coach, it's difficult to keep my mouth shut, but I keep my mouth shut. Because I'm like, people forget that I cornered and I did all these things. And so I'm not any less passionate. If anything, I'm more passionate because I actually understand. So it's intriguing for me to hear these backseat drivers all the time and so many, and it's okay. I get it. I love that there's passion behind the sport and people are like rooting for the people that they know, like, trust. Like, that's great. But this whole like individual saying and pretty much acting as if they know everything that's going on. And if you were that knowledgeable, that fighter would have you in their corner.
Right.
So it's like, but I get it. I love that you're into it. It reminds me of the times where I get super pumped when I'm watching an Ohio State football game and they're doing well, but I also know I'm not backseat coaching.
Sure.
So that's a big misconception going into people don't understand. And even the guy who gets knocked out in 30 seconds, it's not, in most cases, because they're a bad fighter, it's just that can happen to anybody, but they'll just think, oh, that person sucks or that fighter sucks because they lost, or even if it's not a KO. But there's lack of empathy because there's lack of understanding of what goes into this and how much
Sure.
pain and anguish and how difficult it is to just even do a somewhat of a fight camp. So lack of empathy is pretty silly, but it's also, we cannot blame them because they do not know that which they do not understand and have not
Well,
experienced.
and anybody can get caught. I mean, I think the most prime example might be McGregor Aldo. I mean, that Aldo had been undefeated for what, a decade. He had run through his division. I mean, the guy was unbelievable, and he got clipped by a good guy, but he got clipped. Yeah. If you could give your younger self advice, with the experience that you have now, what advice would you give to a maybe your first amateur bout if you're in the corner?
Man, just I mean, I did so much and have so little regrets, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It would primarily come down to two things, I guess, whether it's a training or a fighting scenario. Primarily in a fighting scenario, just breathe. Just
Yeah.
breathe. Which sounds so silly because it's just two words, but it's the number one advice that I give, even when I'm in corner, like when I'm cornering individuals, which I've done so many. It's breathe. I'll say it more than any other word because it's a big thing that we forget because we go into fights like, you can just hear them just, we're just giving everything they got, holding
Yeah.
their breath. And it's just so exhausting. So that, and not only applies in the cage and the mats and life in general. So just breathe, is a big one. And then if I'm going back to my earlier training days, it's tap early.
Mm-hmm.
Tap early, dude. Tore my left meniscus that ended my overall fight career. That I had lots of momentum, was on the borderline, knocking on the door of a pro contract. Had a title fight scheduled between myself and the top 145 pounder back in the day, and just screwed up my left knee because not wanting to tap to a superior submission that I absolutely should have tapped. I know the exact moment that it happened. And I knew exactly that when it happened, that my knee would never be the same ever again. And thank God that I am just as functional as I was in my 20s and I'm in fantastic shape. And I think that's a lot of because I stopped. But I always look back and remember, man, if I would have tapped earlier on multiple submissions, would I be in even better shape? And would that have changed the course? Would I have been able to get that championship, go to that pro contract? Would I have been able to do this? But I don't hang my hat too much on that because I'm very much a believer that everything happened exactly the way that it needed to. And when,
Mm-hmm.
when I did everything that I did in my career, it's like I really don't have any regrets because I had a fantastic record that no one can ever take away from me. I did more in the sport than a lot of individuals have been able to do. And it's now created a fantastic situation. So as long as I remember to just breathe and tap early, which are now great lessons that I carry on today and share with others, that would be a big thing I would tell my younger self for sure.
Yeah, we did a 3-day seminar at Gracie, Ohio this past weekend, and
Nice.
And we did a 2-hour breathing session where it was, some of the Hickson techniques, and but that's something that I think anybody that's on the mats, whether you're fighting MMA or you're a spazzy white belt, you got to learn how to breathe. You got to learn how you can go indefinitely and learn when to use your when to output the energy and when to just breathe.
Yeah.
When you started putting on the gi and you started actually, I guess maybe were you even belted before you put on the gi?
Nope.
No.
Not
Okay.
at all.
So
Even after doing it for a decade, and doing the MMA stuff, I said, I deserve nothing more than anybody else who starts at day one. I said, you give me the widest belt that you have and I will wear it until it turns blue.
there you go. Yeah, actually, well, I learned actually, back in the 90s, Jiu-Jitsu didn't even have a belt system. You were
Really
a white
nice.
belt. Yeah, you were a white belt until eventually you got a blue belt, but that was it. That's why Hoist Gracie and Pedro Valenche, that's why they still wear like a dark blue belt instead of like a traditional black belt. It's because that's how it used to be. The Brazilian government in the 90s wanted to basically take over jiu-jitsu. They said, you guys have you have to be organized, you have to be sanctioned, you have to have a federation, or we're going to make you guys start calling it judo, and you guys are it'll be judo. And so they decided to invent the belt system and stripes, and so that's where that's where you ended up with a purple, brown, and black belt. Is they had to federate so that they wouldn't be forced to call it judo.
That's cool. Fun fact. I didn't know that, dude.
I learned it this weekend. So,
Dude, I love that. That's so fun. I'm
yeah,
pumped to know
yeah.
people.
Everybody thought it was a marketing thing so that they could, keep kids excited and all that. But it was actually
Let's sell it
because
to those silly Americans.
right, exactly. But yeah, it was so that the Brazilian government would get out of their face, and that's how IBJJF came to be, and all these other
Very
things.
cool.
So what changed for you once you started progressing in jiu-jitsu, white to blue and then blue to purple? How has your approach changed? Or what have you focused on the most as far as getting better or even better? You had a pretty extensive experience before you even put the gi on.
Yeah. But I learned very quickly that my experience in no-gi being 10 plus years, it didn't matter nearly as much as I wanted it to or thought it would when I put a gi on, because now my athletic movements that I could typically get away with, you can't do when a grown ass man is holding on to your lapel and the other hand's on your pants and you can't move your hips. But I continue to maintain that white belt mindset, and even as a purple now, it's just that's one thing that I want to maintain. And I even went as far as I got a pawn tattooed on my right ankle on the outside, just to continue to remind myself to make these little pawn-like moves. But I still have the capability, and I know the ways in which I can attack individuals. And though those may be very specific ways, it doesn't change that I could still move and I can still take out any piece on the board because I know exactly how I move. But above all, it's maintaining that white belt mindset. And that's been a huge thing for me, because regardless, I'm always continuously learning from others, regardless of what your belt color is. Yes, we have to cover our own behinds when it comes to live rolling, and I completely understand that very, very well. But having that, I'll say it a million times, that white belt mindset has not only got me to where I am now, but I truly believe that the good Lord allows it and gives me the time on this earth to do so, that I will have my black belt one day. I've just become entirely too focused, because before it was trying to get a championship belt for, mixed martial arts. And as soon as that door closed, I was finding a new challenge. And then I found, okay, now there are identifiable, objective benchmarks of performance and a bit of knowledge that are given to you by proven individuals. That gave me, again, a more objective path to be able to take. And it's been super fascinating to me. And I love how it ebbs and flows, and there's different seasons, and it's my journey specifically, but I still know the path that I'm on.
That's awesome. That's a big part of what my channel is kind of about, is about resilience and transitioning from, in my case, I came out of the military and had to figure some different things out in my life and find a new mission and purpose and those types of things. But I did spend some time on the OSU football staff, where I watched a lot of athletes. Either they would finish their time at Ohio State or they might go pro for a bit. But it's still only a handful of them that spend any amount of years in the NFL. They go and get jobs when they're done. And their whole lives, they've been known as a football player. Or if you're coming out of the Marine Corps, you were a Marine. That was your whole identity. You were an MMA fighter. And now that you're not obviously fighting in the cage, you've focused and you've done some other things where you found other purpose, either as an announcer, but you're also on the mats still training. You still have goals, objectives that you can focus on, so that you're not thinking about what happened in the rear view as much as how are you going to reinvent yourself and improve next. How has jiu-jitsu specifically, what has it done for you outside of the gym as far as relationships and mental health and those kinds of purpose life things?
I mean, it's been huge for my mental health in a lot of ways, and it brings me lots of confidence. And even being like, I'm not a small guy, but I'm not a massive guy by any means. I'm not a heavyweight by whatsoever. But it's like knowing this, like it's very comforting to walk into primarily like any situation that I go into and not really have to worry about if an altercation arises, if I'm going to be able to deal with it. Now, somebody pulls out a gun, that changes everything. But like on a more serious note, it's just something that I think about as I get older, less and less, but it's something I've always worried about. And I think it's because I've been subjected to knowing what human beings are capable of, that it makes me much more cautious to want to start shit with anybody. And not that I'm a confrontational person, but like doing jujitsu and doing just martial arts as a whole, it's not only been a phenomenal fitness journey, which was a huge thing for me in the beginning, but it's great that I still have a form of adversity, and not that I feel that it's any more important for men or women to more importantly have adversity in your life. I feel all humans need something like that. But me
Mhm.
being a man and only being able to speak from my perspective, I think it's really important that we as men have some sort of adversity that is outside of our control to an extent in our lives, because I feel like it forms a lot of good understanding of things, and it also keeps our feet grounded in a world where it's easy for us to get inflated egos filled with things, spiritually and mentally, that don't matter. So having that, okay, I think I'm tough stuff, but there's this 150-pound guy on the mat that wrapped his legs around my neck and made me almost go unconscious. So maybe I should, when I'm at the bar next time, I should be careful who I run my mouth to and realize how big a deal things really aren't.
Right. That's and I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as size. I am a heavyweight, but I've had a bantamweight absolutely make me look like a child on the mats. I when I was
Crazy.
actually when I was at a white belt, I was training at SBG in Idaho, and I was rolling with a guy named Scott Tometz, who's also a great fighter in his own respect. He was fighting in Bellator, but I had the great idea that I wanted to film my role with Scott because I thought I was starting to improve. Not that I was going to beat Scott, but I thought, I wanted to kind of see what it looked like. And
Yeah.
that is buried in a hard drive that nobody will ever see. It is the most ridiculous, stupid, freaking video of a dude half my size just absolutely making me look like I had no idea what was going on. It's honestly hilarious. Maybe someday I'll publish it. We can see what an idiot I am.
Do it. Do
It
it.
was so bad. It probably still would be bad if I was rolling with him. He's so good. But yeah, it is. The mats are a place that you can absolutely be humbled on any day of the week, and it goes out into, if you are out in town, you don't know if a guy half your size could, other than maybe some obvious cauliflower ear or something like that, but
Mm.
you just don't know, especially in this day and age. So many people train. I mean, um, you can handle yourself until they grab you, and you realize they grab you like they're a brown belt, and you're like, oh shit. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you? How old are you now?
Currently 33 years
Oh,
young.
so you were yeah. You say you're getting old. You're still relatively young. Um, have you adjusted any of the way that you train? I know you talked about tapping early and those things, but have you hit that point in your life yet where you go, oh man, I'm not 25. I need to slow this down. Or
Yeah, I slowed down my style significantly after I cracked my ribs and had probably the most serious martial arts injury that I had. It was so bad that like after that I rolled like maybe 3 times in a 12-month period because I'd just been injured so badly, and it was such a scary thing for me. And so knowing this, thank God I wasn't hurt by any means, but from that point it just further reminded me that I have to be very, very careful. And if I do want to create longevity, that I need to adjust my speed and my tenacity. And even though I still am athletic, I still am quick, and I still feel great because I still exercise and take care of my body.
Mhm.
That there are still things that my joints don't want to do, and there are moves that I don't do. Like I don't rock a pendulum sweep in the same way that I used to, because that's the move that got me injured trying to escape from somebody who's this big roided up dude who could just squeeze really, really hard, and my timing was just really bad, and he squeezed me really hard, put all his weight on me, and my ribs went perpendicular to the ground. And all that
Yeah.
said, having these situations has reminded me to slow down, and that technique is much more efficient than these explosive movements, so more energy conservation. And above all, I spent so much of my MMA career training with guys that were like larger and stronger. So when I got the opportunity, sorry, I guess from that, I was off my back a lot. So when I
Yeah.
had the opportunity to be challenged by other people in the gi, and I realized, wow, I'm going to spend a lot less energy on top. And so that was a light bulb that you had received the message many times, but a great black belt once told me that, you'll learn to drill a move a million times, but it's when you're ready to receive the message that it will become a part of your technique. And I wasn't ready to receive the message until, I was ready per se. So
I
have
like that.
definitely changed, not slowed down significantly, but learned more energy use and efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to keep you training when you're my age and beyond.
That's the goal. That's the
You
goal.
know, so as far as I mean, your message in this is slow down and breathe, right? And I think that's life, right? You can be going through challenging periods of time. You can be in periods where it seems like maybe the world's against you, and if you just slow down, breathe, pronounce things correctly, um, you know, get it out as you can, then you're going to be set up for success. What other fight promotions are you promoting? Um, where are you going to be next?
Oh goodness. Um, there are not a massive list of like prominent, super active promotions in the state of Ohio, and a lot of like
Hmm.
pop-up ones. But I've most recently been working with Ego Fight Series. And a lot of these are based in Columbus and West, if you will. But Ego Fight Series is one. Just did American Fight Promotions. Was it last weekend? I have there's Oh Boy Promotions out of Lima, and I've got another promotion that I'm doing this weekend. That'll be my third event in the last 4 weeks. So those are some big ones as well. But if I had to say the ones that I'm working with the most currently that are doing these shows, definitely like Ruthless Made. They're a prominent boxing show for sure with their connections to Toledo Golden Gloves and USA Boxing. And then Ego Fight Series is a big MMA promotion, as well as American Fight Promotions. But there's a lot of other ones that are just like they're going to do a one-off shows here and there, things like that. So you're going to have those. But I'm really happy and really proud to have represented, I think it's 9 different fire organizations over the last decade and counting.
That's
So I'm really happy about that.
that's wild. Um, all right, so gi or no gi? If you at this point in your career, I know obviously you were no gi forever, and uh, are you still a no gi? You love no gi more, or are you actually liking the gi more than, or is it just both?
Dude, you asked me such an interesting question at such an interesting time in my life. Um, Man, like as an older guy in the jiu-jitsu community, which I know I'm not old, I understand that, but like not being a young guy in the jiu-jitsu community, I appreciate and respect and love gi. Like I do. I really, really do, because you have a system, like you can increase like this the ranking up of it. Like having a clear path that's not just I'm just gonna do this until I can't. Having a clear path and like identifiable performance metrics is really, it works well with my brain. And
Hmm.
I love that challenge. And I also love how it's more difficult because you can now be held down by somebody and you have to really figure out new problems. But I do feel that no gi is more fun. I will
Okay,
say that. So I respect, admire, and if you maybe like pick, if I could only do one of them for the rest of my life, man, like maybe I'd have to lean into gi more than likely for a handful of reasons. But knowing that that's not a realistic question, it's
right.
like, oh, you can only pick one for the rest of your life. I would say again, more fun, no gi, no doubt. Plus, you get to wear a lot cooler outfits in no gi.
That's true. That's true. Especially, I trained in a white gi only gym. That
Oh,
wasn't
my
that wasn't always.
condolences.
Yeah, it's funny when I first started training. I guess it wasn't when I first started, but when I moved down I lived in Charleston for a while, trained down there, and it was anything goes. And uh, our gis and our rash guards, but our gis, it was like a fashion show every day. It's like what show your role is Ocampo wearing today? Who's got this gi on? Who's dressed like a Ninja Turtle? And then now I'm at Gracie, Ohio, so it's white gi. I get away with a little bit different rash guards, but yeah, it is. When I first got there, I was really kind of almost resistant to uh, the uniformity because I liked all the different flavor of people's style. It would reflect how they rolled. Actually, I mean, often. Yeah. I think that the gi and training long term, I think it's more compatible as you age. But now in your gym, are you guys mostly sport jujitsu, or do you do a good amount of focus into actual self defense, or are you keeping that in the forefront of your training when you know? So if you're seated up guard, you don't get kicked up in the face.
So depending on like who has fight camps and things along those lines, I mean, a lot of it being an MMA gym, primarily, like it definitely helps
Okay.
to have that, having those gi classes in the middle, those who are really serious about it. And it's primarily just competitive based, if you will. Like, not that everyone is competing whatsoever, but we're still doing things that are competitive legal. We'll very little discuss like, hey, here's how much this item is worth this many points. But at the end of the day, like, it's primarily an MMA gym that has very focused classes on jujitsu, like specifically. But from the gi perspective, it's not really as much of a, I mean, in all technicality, it's like definitely a self-defense thing, if you will, but that's not more focused. Like, that's not what we're leading everything. It's like, hey, if somebody comes up in the street and does this to you, we're saying, hey, for this technique, for gi jujitsu, this is the move, this is what you're supposed to do, and never really relating it back to, unless it organically comes up in conversation. Like someone says, oh, if you're doing no gi, or, if this happens, in this certain scenario, this is how you would adjust this because you don't have a gi to grip, whatever. But it's primarily just, we go there to do jujitsu, and that's what we do.
Okay. That's fair enough. I'll give you a little bit of a lightning round here. What do you think is the most underrated skill in announcing?
Underrated skill, man. If I had to think about the things that I do that are the most tonality. Tonality is a big one. Like doing the whole classic Bruce Buffer thing versus what I do. It takes lots of practice, and I say this in all humility. I know that I make it look easy, but doing all these different vocal inflections and different tonalities, so I'm not announcing the same thing every single time, because it'll get old. And if people who really pay attention, you don't notice it. You don't notice it because I don't give you an opportunity to notice it, because I'm mixing my tonality every time I say something. The way I ramp into your name based off of what information that I have, based off of the vowels and consonants, and then what type of enyes you may have in your name. If you're a certain nationality, like, there are so many things that I think about when I'm reading your name that you'll never notice how intricate that tonality is and how much I match it and control it, because it's just the way that I do it. And I think it is really underrated, because if I say something in a weird way, it stands out in the wrong way.
Who's got the hardest name that you've had to say on the first read?
Oh my gosh. These people from some type of just like some type of Russian company, like this country, if you like, it's seriously, I can't even, it's hard to even like remember them and repronounce them, because I feel like sometimes I have to like spit in the middle of saying them, because it's how like it's the most blankistan names you could think of, man. Like, and it's entertaining. Like, don't get me wrong, but they're so hard sometimes to pronounce, because there's lots of ch and g, and you have to really get your involved. You really have to. And so those are definitely the most fun, if you will.
And so you're able to interview the fighters ahead of time and really work on making sure you have your phonetics correct.
You try, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to go chase fighters for specific information. I've got enough experience, like, just being able to read names and sound them out. If I butcher it that bad, which I don't think I've ever butchered it that bad, but if I say something that's even, a fighter sometimes will say something like in cage, like, hey, it's this, if you will. But I think that's only happened like once or twice in the last decade. Usually I say it close, but I got a little trick. Usually if it's a name I know I cannot pronounce, I'll put as much rasp in it as possible, and I will draw out the last vowel, and nobody knows the difference.
Nobody's here to, okay. Best nickname for a fighter that you've announced?
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Oh, that's so funny. There are so many. The best one? Oh, give me 1 second, because there are seriously so many that are so cool. Alex, Riled Up Ryle.
Okay.
That's probably the best one. He fought in the Ego Fight series, one of my training partners, but his last name is Ryle. So the fact that he like riled up, like that's cool. And it's fans buy into it. That's pretty sweet. Now, I could probably think of maybe 10 other cool ones if I had more time, but for that one, that's probably one of my favorite ones for sure. Oh, honorable mention, someone's nickname, he had a mullet, and his nickname was the Kentucky Waterfall.
There you go. That's a winner. That's funny. My
There you
my
go. I told
favorite
you.
of all time, Scott Tometz. I told you about rolling with him earlier. He was Scott Tickle Fight Tometz.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, I would love to announce that.
yeah, he's a character. Um, well, Eddie, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know we kind of short notice we got you in, and I appreciate you coming in. Um, where can we find you? What other things are you into that you like to plug?
Yeah. So, with that being said, I love interacting with people on social media, and you can primarily find a lot of my announcing content on Eddie Eddie the announcer. So simple enough. I'm on Instagram as Eddie the announcer. That'd be the best way to be able to connect with a lot of my mixed martial arts stuff. You can find me on Facebook at Eddie Saunders Jr. And then also, if you with my side bid, well, I know my side business, my primary occupation is running a marketing agency, Speak Friend Consulting. So also check out speakfriend.io.
Somehow, I'm not surprised that you're in marketing. So it's a it's a
That's what
it's a
they
good
all say. Why do
marriage.
people say that?
Well, if the shoe fits,
Yeah,
it
exactly. No,
means maybe
I
you're in the right line of work, right? If you said you were a mechanic, then say, man, you probably keeping everybody entertained in the back, but you got the gift of gab. So
thank you so much. I love it, man. It's a passion, and I'm the luckiest dude on this planet. You can't convince me otherwise.
that's a good way to keep it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for your time
All
as well,
right.
bro.
All right. Thank you, Eddie.